Peace, 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 love, light, and healing. Peace to the gods, peace to the earth. I want to welcome y'all back to Yaki TV, Eye of Lotus Research Institute, where we talk about numerable discussions when it's dealing with anatomy, when it's dealing with autonomy, when it's dealing with just anything to do with physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health. Today, we're going to be talking about a particular topic, and this topic that we're going to be discussing is diabetes. Diabetes is called by multiple different names. You have diabetes 1, diabetes 2, hyperglycemia, hypoglycemia, diabetes mellitus. And if you actually get into the etymology of the word diabetes, it actually means sweet urine. And the reason why it means sweet urine is because we're dealing with the blood sugar. And whenever you start hearing about diabetes, it's the blood sugar have been compromised, either by the pancreas, either by the nervous system, or either by damaged, unutilized minerals and cells dealing with the pancreas. So get your pens, get your pads. We're going to sit back, relax, and we're going to dive deep. Tell me when I'm rolling, bro. Get into diabetes, it stands for sweet urine because the pancreas have been compromised, the nervous system have been compromised, the autonomic nervous system have been compromised, and basically the sugar is not penetrating the cells, so the cells can yield its energy called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. So when you start breaking down these different levels of diabetes, it'll show you which system inside the body or which cells inside the bodies that make up the tissues or make up the organs is compromised. For instance, diabetes mellitus 1, or what they call hyperglycemia. You start dealing with something where the sugars inside of the body is not making it into the cell because insulin is failing to do its job. Insulin is a hormone and it's like an alcohol solvent. And what insulin is, it acts as the key factor to a door. The door is supposed to go on the cell, and insulin acts as that key to open that door for sugar can penetrate the cells. That way the cell can yield its energy through burning off the fuel. Then you got hyperglycemia, or what they call diabetes mellitus 2. And this is simply the adrenal glands is not functioning properly, or because the adrenal glands is in control of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, or what we call the autonomic nervous system. And these are the things that run on autopilot. And one of these autopilot things that the adrenal glands is in control of is sugar metabolism. And that's what the adrenal glands is for. It metabolizes corticosteroids, it metabolizes sugars, it metabolizes steroids, it metabolizes hormones. And not only that, it is for the utilization of all your essential minerals and your trace minerals and amino acids. So when you start getting into diabetes 1, that's insulin dependent because you're not producing enough insulin, which we're going to dive deep into. And then you get into diabetes 2, it is simply the adrenal glands is not working because neurological problems is messing up. Whenever you start talking about the autonomic nervous system, or you start talking about the adrenal glands, you always got to take in consideration the central nervous system, which is the brain, the cardiovascular nervous system, which is the heart mechanism, and last but not least, the autonomic nervous system, or what they call the intrinsic nervous system, which is the adrenal glands. And this deals with all the serotonin and melatonin that's produced by the gut. So we're going to dive deep into it, and we're going to pull out our models, and we're just going to show an example of exactly what we're talking about. So what we finna go deep into right now is diabetes mellitus 1, or what they call hyperglycemia 1. And again, once you get into diabetes 1, it's insulin dependent, meaning that there is something going on inside of the pancreas where the pancreas structure functioning of the cells is not holding its integrity enough to actually produce the insulin. We have to remember that insulin acts as a key to a door. The specific door that I'm talking about is the door to the cell. And the insulin is that key that unlocks the door. And once it unlocks the door, glucose, or your sugars that goes through this process of ATP, or what we're going to call fuel metabolism, for you can yield energy, you need to be able to penetrate that cell, that mucous membrane layer of the cell. And that's what glycogen do. Glycogen is actually produced by the pancreas. Now, when you look at the pancreas It's actually in your stomach. It's connected to your gallbladder. It's connected to your small intestinal tract that they call the duodenum, and it's connected to your spleen. And we're going to talk about the spleen in a minute, because the spleen is associated with the damage of the pancreas a lot, because the spleen is a specific organ that's attached to a specific system, that if this system starts failing, then the spleen will start backing up into the organs, corroding all the cells that make up this specific organ. So now you're looking at the pancreas have something in it called the islets of Langerhans. And what the islets of Langerhans is, it's a group of associated cells that sit inside the pancreas. And these groups of associated cells are made to produce certain type of things. So for instance, one of the cells, associated cells inside the islets of Langerhans is called the alpha cells. Another one is called the beta cells. Another one is called the delta cells. Glycogen is a sugar measure. It brings the sugar up inside of the blood. And then you have the beta cells. The beta cells are in control of producing something called insulin. Insulin, again, is a hormone / alcohol solvent that actually takes the sugar, glucose, that's inside of the bloodstream and act as a key factor to open the door of the cell to deliver the goodies, or what we're going to call sugar, for the cells can start metabolizing the sugar and using it as, energy. ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate, ADP, adenosine diphosphate, AMP, adenosine monophosphate. And this is the way that the body converts energy over, for you can yield this energy, for you can do your daily life things like breathe, talk, live, think, walk, run, work out, go to work, and all these other things. You cannot do none of these things if it wasn't for glucose or fructose or galactose. All right, and we're going to talk about sucrose and maltose and pentose, which is sugars that you do not need, because these sugars are cooked in laboratories, and these are processed sugars, and these sugars are neurotoxins that kills the body and give you diseases like hyperglycemia. So we're going to stick to regular, naturally grown sugar in fruits and in vegetables and carbohydrates, and that is the glucose factor. So the beta cells inside of the pancreas, remember, the islets of Langerhans is basically associated tissues and associated cells that's agglomerated in these areas, and they produce different type of things. The alpha cells, they make glycogen. Glycogen is what raises the glucose in the blood. The beta cells make insulin. Insulin is what lowers the sugar in the blood, but it lowers the sugar in the blood by doing two things: either sending the sugar back to the liver for storage, to store these sugars up and turn them into fats, or to be a key mechanism to the cell and open up the cell door to deliver glucose to the cell for the cells burn it off. Then you have something called a delta cell. And the delta cells actually produces something called simultastatin. And what simultastatin is, it's made of glycogen, it's made of insulin, and it's made of a pituitary growth hormone, showing you that the pituitary gland and the thyroid gland actually governs the pancreas along with the spleen. So if you have any type of pancreas issues, we already know off back that we need to check the pituitary. We already know off back that we need to check the thyroid and the parathyroid. We already know off back that we need to check this lymphatic associated organ that we call the spleen. Notice the word I said, lymphatic, so it's going to all lean back to a lymphatic system compromised. Now what we need to figure out is, why is the pancreas compromised, and what is stopping the beta cells of the pancreas from yielding and producing insulin? For insulin can act as that key mechanism and take glucose that's in the blood to penetrate the cells, for you can get energy and you can get ATP. Now, when you start really speaking about diabetes mellitus 2 or hyperglycemia 2, you start getting into more common diabetes. And that's because half of the world, worldwide, globally, have adrenal fatigue or have a neurological adrenal autonomic nervous system compromising, due to eating wrong foods and due to eating neurotransmitters and just cytotoxins and toxemia. So when you start talking about diabetes mellitus 2 or diabetes 2, it's nothing but adrenal gland problem. And the reason why I'm stating that is because the adrenal glands is actually in control of your sugar metabolism, is actually in control of your sugar utilization. These are the adrenal glands. This is a life size, a 3 times life size adrenal glands and kidney. probably even 4, because this is pretty damn big. But once you really start getting into, you know, the anatomy of the physiological state of your glands and of all of your different organs, when you look at the adrenal glands is actually shaped like a pyramid, and it's the size of a walnut, and it sits on top of the kidneys. The adrenal glands are very important. And in another video, we would go dive deep just on the adrenal glands, but just for this particular video, what the adrenal glands is important when it's associated to diabetes and sugar metabolism is just that. It actually metabolizes the sugar. You know, your sugar breaking down, your sugar going through its utilization process, the body producing corticosteroids, the body producing steroids, the body utilizing minerals, the body's bringing the sugar into the bloodstream in the first place for glycogen, which works by the pancreas, can bring the sugar glucose up in the blood for insulin, can be produced by the beta cells inside of the islands of Langerhans to even penetrate the cell by way of insulin. When none of this even be possible if it wasn't for the 2 glands called the adrenal glands that sits on top of both of your kidneys inside of your body. So when you start getting into diabetes mellitus 2 or diabetes 2, it is about sugar metabolism, and it's have been compromised because something is not working inside the adrenal glands. And usually what we find when we're healing these things inside of people is it's a bunch of mucus and a bunch of acids that have been built up inside of the kidneys, and the kidneys are starting to back up interstitially by way of lymphatic fluid. And once you back up all that lymphatic fluid and all the salts and all the different acids and acidosis start building up in the kidneys, the first thing it do is short circuit the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands is in control of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. It's also in control of the autonomic nervous system. If you look at the prefix of autonomic nervous system, it means auto. And these are things that's supposed to run on autopilot. For instance, you eating some food and you breaking down the food and going through the digestion. You know, it's 4 keys to the kingdom. The first one is digestion. The second one is absorption. The third one is utilization. And the fourth one is elimination. All of these different processes are actually ran by the adrenal glands. So if you digest the food and then you finally get it inside of the stomach and it goes into the duodenum, this is where the absorption happens at by way of the microbiome. Once the microbiota of the microbiome gets these things inside of there, now it's time to be utilized. Well, this is in control of all of your utilization. This is in control of metabolizing your sugars. If you have something inside of the gut breaking all these things down to sugar and bringing the sugar into the bloodstream, then how do it get distributed to the bloodstream? It's going to need a signal. It's going to need a melanin transmitter, a melanin neurotransmitter at that, and that is produced by none other but the adrenal glands. In order to truly understand what diabetes is, it's best that I take you through the actual process of you eating your food, and your food is breaking down and digesting inside of your body to when the microbiota picks up the sugars and bring it to the blood for transportation to the cells, and how the pancreas and how the autonomic nervous system and all the entire whole body collectively, consciously just work together to truly bring you estrogens and yields of energy. And this is where diabetes is going to lie at. So when you first eat something, the first digestion process always takes place in the mouth. You chew that food, and you're supposed to super chew the food to break it down into a liquid state before you swallow it. Then it goes down the esophagus. When it goes down the esophagus, it starts to go into the stomach. And I'm going to show you that right here. Let me take the heart off too, for y'all can really see this. And if you can, brother God Jason, could you zoom in a little bit more for me? So it goes down the esophagus. Notice this little door right here is called the cardiac sphincter. It's kind of separated with this anatomy model. And the cardiac sphincter is a door that closes, and then the food make it inside of the stomach. It goes into the fungus of the stomach. It goes into the antrium of the stomach, and it goes into the body of the stomach. This is where your first breaking down process starts at. Then after that, it goes through something called the pyloric sphincter. And the pyloric sphincter is where it actually meets the duodenum. So once it passed the pyloric sphincter, it goes into the duodenum. Now, the reason why I had to take you through this process, because the moment it goes into the duodenum, notice that the pancreas is connected right into the duodenum. You see that? Now, notice that the spleen is connected to the tail end of the pancreas. Now, once it gets inside the duodenum, the pancreas and the liver starts doing its job, producing all type of bile salts, producing all type of basal salts. And then the islands of Langerhans go to work. And what happens is when it was in the actual duodenum part of the stomach, which is this part right here. Let me take this off. See this? This is a 9-inch small intestinal tract. The food is in here already broken down from the stomach. Now the absorption process is happening. But before that absorption process is happening, something got to happen to the food. So what happens is the pancreas starts activating its things by the adrenal glands. These are the adrenal glands. Remember, I was telling you that the adrenal glands are these walnut-sized, pyramid-shaped glands that sits on top of both kidneys. Notice how close they are to the actual pancreas. Notice how close it is to your digestive system, period, because the entire digestive system is ran on autopilot, or what we call the autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system. This is adrenal glands all day. So in the islands of Langerhans is now starting to produce something called glycogen. And what glycogen is doing is through the absorption process, when absorption always takes place in the duodenum by way of these little microvilli, these little fingers that stick inside the stomach. And then what's between these little microvilli, there's trillions and trillions of bacteria, candida bacteria, biobifidum bacteria, lactobacillus bacteria, all different types of bacteria. And they take all of this broken down sugar and broken down molecules. They take all the different constituents. They take all the bioflavonoids, the biophotons, the tannins, and they pick it up and they take it to blood capillaries. When it goes to blood capillaries, what the alpha cell does is produces something called glycogen to raise glucose inside the circulatory system. So now we just got sugar, glucose just sitting inside the blood. But remember, we need a key for sugar can actually enter a cell, because it's a door that's on the cell that can only be opened by a specific key. So then what happens is the autonomic nervous system in the adrenal glands, it produces more melanin neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are messengers, and it goes and it tells the islands of Langerhans, and it goes specifically to the beta cells that's inside of these pancreas associated tissues, and it say produce insulin. So then insulin acts as an alcohol solvent, which is nothing but a hormone, but you need alcohol to penetrate any cell, and that's why tinctures is so important, you know, and that's why regular alcohol is so dangerous to you, because it dries out the body and it dehydrates the body, because it goes immediately into the bloodstream and it breaks down the cells, because that's what alcohol does. It breaks down the cells. Your body naturally produces alcohol, and it does that through fermenting sugar. You see what I'm saying? But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. Now, the alcohol have started responding because the beta cells is telling insulin to do its job. So now insulin goes inside the bloodstream, and what insulin do is it takes the glucose molecule that glycogen raised the glucose in the blood, and it brings it to the cell. And what this does is it connects to something called a marker, or what you would literally call a transmitter, an insulin transmitter, and it turns the key on that cellular marker. And now the sugar glucose can actually penetrate that cellulose, or what we're going to call that blood mucosa barrier that was around the Golgi apparatus of the cell, and penetrate the cell. And now the cell begins to burn glucose as a fuel. And what happens is glucose start breaking down into carbon dioxide. Then the carbon dioxide start breaking down to water. Then this water is transformed, and then this water is burnt off as a fuel. And that fuel yields something called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate, AMP, adenosine monophosphate, ADP, adenosine diphosphate. And that's where you get all of your energy, for you can actually yield breath, yield cosmic energy, think, and just live your everyday life. So we see that it's all about the adrenal glands, and it's all about the pancreas. And if they are not responding to each other or in correspondence with each other, this is called basically compromising of these tissues or these cells that I'm talking about right here. Now, where we're going wrong at is this. Maybe you're eating the wrong sugar, and that is what's causing the pancreas to overwork and to overload itself. Or maybe you have parasites, and these parasites are like fluke worms, Fasciolopsis boyski, that made itself inside the pancreas, and now it is eating away at the cells because it comes to eat acids, and these things are full of acids. Maybe the adrenal glands have shut down because you have been eating acidic forming and mucus forming foods, and mucus have backed up into the pancreas, and the adrenal glands is not working no more, so they're not able to produce melanin neurotransmitters to actually connect connect or send messengers to the actual pancreas to tell the pancreas what to do. Or maybe you have a neurological problem, something is wrong with your pituitary gland. Because remember, in the delta cells of the pancreas, you produce something called somatostatin. And somatostatin is a mixture of actual alpha cells, which produces your glycogen. It's a mixture of beta cells, which produces your insulin. And it's a mixture of its own cells and hormones called a growth hormone that is actually stimulated by the pituitary gland and the thyroid gland. So it can be a number of things that is causing these issues, but we're going to break this simple issue down to one thing, and that is acidosis. Now, no matter any so-called disease that we're dealing with, and remember, again, I don't believe in diseases, but the reason why we speak and say diseases and mention their names is because you identify with that. We do not believe in disease. We believe that the body is capable of healing itself. And when the body is going through its detoxification mechanisms and processes, the body creates symptoms. And then you take this symptomology and you go to the allopathic community and they localize the symptoms and then they give it a name according to their symptoms and according to the breaking down of the tissues that's associated with the symptoms, and they call this disease. But it's nothing but the body trying its hardest to heal itself. With that being said, though, whenever you get into any disease, you have to realize that something is going wrong with the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is the sewage system of the body. We have to remember that the blood actually feeds the cells of the body. The nervous system commands and talks and communicate with the cells of the body, but the lymphatic system is the sewage system of the body. Now, whenever you eat things in macro, notice you have a colon that these things pass through. Notice consumption, elimination. It's the same thing with the micro. Whenever you eat these things and it goes through the system that I just showed you through digestion, and the duodenum start breaking these things down more, and the microbiota picks up these things through the little villi and take them through the blood capillaries and feed them and transport them through the blood system. It feeds it to the cell, for the cell can begin to eat all the different sugars like the glucoses and the fructoses and the galactoses. And once the cells eat, consumption, it has to eliminate. So when the cells eliminate, if you're backed up interstitially, or if you backed up inside the lymphatic system, the sewage system can't pick up all that agglomerated and accumulated waste that the cell's been producing. So what's going to happen? All of the alkaline ash and the acid ash that came from that metabolic process will just sit on the cells and burn the cells and burn the cells. Now remember, the pancreas is right in the gut. Remember, the spleen is right in the gut area. The duodenum, the small intestinal tract that I'm talking about, is right in the gut area. Everything that I'm talking about is in the gut area. So if you're backing up in the gut area and all of these cells are full of acids because the cells had to take a poop because it consumed the microbes of what the cells broke down, and now you have all this poop sitting on top of the cells, and the lymphatic system, or what we call the sewage system of the body, is backed up, then all of that acid begins to damage the cells. Now, what is going to damage? Gut-associated organs. What is a gut-associated organ? The pancreas. What is a gut-associated organ or gland? The adrenal glands. What is a gut-associated organ? The kidneys. What is a gut-associated organ? The liver, the gallbladder, the duodenum, the spleen. And once all these things are compromised, they stop working. And when they stop working and the pancreas stop working and the adrenal glands stop working, you can bet your bottom dollar you're going to get diabetes mellitus, diabetes 1, diabetes 2, hyperglycemia, whatever we want to call it. Now, what we need to do is focus on the adrenal glands, because the adrenal glands is in control of this sewage system to get rid of all the cellular metabolic waste that is built up by the body. And the adrenal glands produces a neuromelanin transmitter called acetylcholine. And what acetylcholine does, acetylcholine actually dilate the lymphatic vessels. Acetylcholine constrict the lymphatic vessels. It only don't do that to that, but these are neurons that constrict and dilate the actual vascular system, the cardiovascular system, the arteries, the vena cava, the return duct valves. And this is how you actually get your lymph moving. Not only does it constrict and dilate the cardiovascular system like the vena cava, the return ducts, the arteries, but it's another important system, which truly might be the most important system in your body, which is your lymphatic vessels. Because remember, without the lymphatic system, it's impossible to pick up the poop or the feces or the defecation that your cells are producing on a metabolic rate. Now, so what the acetylcholine does is be produced by the adrenal glands, and it sends signals to all these different lymphatic associated tissues and vessels, and it tells you to constrict, or it tells the lymphatic vessels to dilate. And this actually starts the movement, the mobility of the sewage system to get it down to the kidneys. Not only that, though, the adrenal glands is actually in control of the pumping filter for the kidney filtration system. Imagine a fish tank analogy, and you look and you plug in a fish tank. Notice that plug in the fish tank goes to a pump, and the pump, it actually goes to the filtering system. That pump actually acts as the adrenal glands. It acts as the electrical conductivity to turn on the filtration system, and the filtration system actually acts as the kidneys to the fish tank. It is to clean up all the metabolic poop from the fish, from the things that the fish is pooping out, from all the defecation, from all of the different toxins and things, from all the algae that is built up inside the ecological system, or what we're going to call the cell. The cell is nothing but the fish tank itself, and the cell needs to be clean because the fish is eating and pooping inside of the tank. Well, the filtration system wouldn't be nothing without the pump, and the pump is the actual adrenal glands that actually activates acetylcholine, which actually starts to constrict and dilate the actual lymphatic vessels to get that lymph moving. Now, if without the adrenal glands being cut on and being neurologically stimulated, the kidneys go down because the filtering system don't work. Well, let me tell you that the kidneys is actually in control of filtering all of the alkaline or the acidic ash that is produced by the metabolic byproducts of you eating foods, by the metabolic byproducts of your cells burning sugar to produce ATP. Whenever you burn sugar or whenever you burn fuel or gas, you get a byproduct from it. Just look at a car, for instance. When you burn the gas, it produces something called carbon dioxide. So for burning fuel to keep the vehicle moving, carbon dioxide is then produced as a byproduct that will kill you if you breathe it in, and it goes out of the tailpipe. It's the same analogy that's going on. A lot of y'all tailpipes are being stopped. A lot of y'all tailpipes are clogged, and all of that carbon dioxide is bagging back up in the body, and it is killing the pancreas, it is killing the adrenals, and it is killing the cellular tissues that make up the physical mechanism. And this is where all of your associated diseases are coming from. What causes diabetes? Now, imagine you going to a convenience store, not going to your backyard, not going to your garden, not going to organic produce side of the convenience store, and you getting things that are highly processed. And these things that are highly processed or filled with neurotoxins that we're going to call sugar. And what I mean by sugar, I'm not talking about monosaccharide. A monosaccharide is a organic simple sugar. Mono, which means one, and that is fructose. Another monosaccharide is glucose. Another monosaccharide is galactose. Anytime you start going to these stores and you start eating these highly processed foods that have been going through laboratories and have been cooked time and time over, have been added to additives and preservatives, been sprayed with insecticides, pesticides, and all these different things, this sugar then become poly. And this is what you call polysaccharide, which means many sugars, and your body cannot break it down. So imagine eating these thick, complex structures of sugars when you are a single cell organism and you need simple sugars for it to digest quickly and make it to the cell fast for the cells can fire it off to yield that energy. But instead, you're eating all these high fructose corn syrups, you drinking soda pops, you eating candy, you like your honey buns, you like your cupcakes, you like your different types of carbohydrates, or what we're going to call pasta, what we're going to call bread. These things are polysaccharides. They're filled with dextrose, they're filled with pentose, they're filled with high fructose corn syrup. And these polysaccharides, they can't be breaking down because they're so complex in their structure and it's full of cellulose. So then you eat these things, and what's happening is the body is constantly trying to break it down, which it can't. So then now you have this teeter-totter between the adrenal glands and between the actual pancreas, where the adrenal glands is telling the pancreas, hey, bring glycogen to rise this sugar up in the blood. And then you got the actual pancreas yielding from its beta cells insulin. Insulin goes and try to take this, but it can't break down the sugar. sugar. So the sugar is constantly clunking up in the blood, clunking up in the blood. You playing a teeter-totter game with the adrenal glands and with the pancreas, with the beta cells of the pancreas, the alpha cells of the pancreas. So the pancreas is fighting back and forth, fighting back and forth. Mind you, you couldn't break down this complex not amino acid structure, but this complex polysaccharide sugar, and it is corroding because sugar ferments. So now this fermentation is bringing on acid ash. So now you got acids in the body from eating these wrong foods, and you got high sugar inside of the blood for eating these wrong foods. What's going to happen? The pancreas is going to start getting ate upon with the acids that's being produced by these polysaccharides. The adrenal glands is going to start getting ate upon by the acids that's produced by these polysaccharide sugars, and that's the byproducts of trying to process them in the first place. You're producing all this carbonic acid, this phytic acid, and this lactic acid. So the cells begin to get corroded. Now mucus have to respond and bring calcium monotriphosphate to come try to put out the fire. Now you got calcified mucus because calcification come from calcium mixing with acids. So now you got crystallization of all these acids associated with the adrenal glands and associated with the actual pancreas. And then remember, inside the pancreas, you have the glycogen that's being produced in the insulin. The insulin acts as the key that actually penetrates the cell and bring the sugar into there. But the sugar can't make it into the cells because it's not small enough, because it ain't getting broken down, because you're eating too many polycomplex sugars. You know what happened next? The pancreas give up. Pancreas shuts down. The pancreas say, I can't do it no more. The acids are eating at me. You know what happened next? The adrenal glands become fatigued for doing too much work, trying to utilize all the sugars, using the corticosteroids, using all the sugars and steroids and trying to bring them into the bloodstream, send the melanin transmitters to talk to the pancreas, but nothing ever gets done in that work. You're overloading these things because you're taking in things that you cannot digest. So now sugar just builds up in the blood. Glycogen just keep building all the sugars up in the blood, and insulin never responds. Now the sugar gets inside of the blood. And now you have sugar inside of the blood turning and fermenting inside of the blood, which comes like a sticky glue. It reminds me of gluten. Now you have blood just sticking together. Now these bloods are being sticking together, and it's forming all types of clots, and it's keeping you from circulating. So now you're not bringing oxygen into the body to get to certain extremities of the body. Now you see certain people with diabetes having to get their legs cut off because their legs are turning black because no oxygen and iron phosphate is getting there, because all this thick sugar is built up into the arteries and built up into the blood, because insulin is not responding to actually be the key to unlock the door of the cell to actually get the glucose inside of the cell. So now you got to get your foot amputated. Now you got to get an arm amputated. Now you're getting all types of blood clots, and you're getting aneurysms. You dizzy all the time. And now all the sugar in the blood is building up fat, so you gaining weight. Now you start getting black patches on your skin, and all types of things start happening. Now mucus is constantly building up because the mucus is trying to get rid of the acids. So mucus is a response to acid, not a cause to acid. So now all this mucus build up inside the lymphatic system. You start backing up interstitially. You backing up into your bloodstream, and you back up into your optic nerves. Now you start getting cataracts because mucus is on the eyes. Now you start getting glaucoma because different floaters of mucus is in the eyes. Now you going blind. You see how just one disease or one different compromising of the cells by eating the wrong foods and eating the wrong neurotoxins can back up the whole body and shut down the whole digestive system and kill you. And that is really what's happening. Now, it's a beautiful thing about why I'm talking about this, because we can avoid this whole thing if you stop now. Stop eating the sugars. Quit the addictive personality. The reason why we're addicted to these sugars is because we have been programmed to be addicted to these sugars. These sugars, there is no difference between cocaine and sugar cane. It gives you the same dopamine brain explosion inside of your brain. If you actually study the MRIs of a brain that's been on heroin and been on cocaine, and then you go look at one that's been on junk food and been on carbohydrates, it gives you the same display on the MRI display, showing you that these are neurotoxins and these are drugs. And the dopamine is what they call dope heads. You're chasing the dope. So a lot of people are addicted to these sugars and addicted to eating and addicted to junk foods because what's being programmed inside of our heads. We have to break the program. If you're experiencing, just being nauseated all the time, so if you're experiencing swelling in your hands and feet, if you're experiencing poop coming out not broken down, it's coming out looking like the way it actually went in. If you're experiencing high blood pressure, tension, headaches, growing and gaining a lot of weight and not able to put off the weight, or becoming very, very skinny and can't gain weight. Most of these times, these things are alluding that you have diabetes mellitus, diabetes 1 or 2, or what they call hyperglycemia. If you taste metallic tastes on your tongues, you having poor vision in your eyesight, you start feeling tingling sensations throughout your body, usually in your lower extremities. These things all alludes to that you might be pre-diabetic or have diabetes 1, 2, or have hyperglycemia. Make sure you fast, at least a 3-day dry fast. If you can't do 3 days dry, do 3 days water. After that, you're going to have to go on an all fruit diet. And the reason why I'm saying all fruit diet, because you will not glucose load on an all fruit diet. When you deal with vegetables, you deal with glucose. And as sad as it might sound, usually when you have gotten diabetes from all of the high, fructose corn syrup and all of the other cooked dextrose and maltose and pentose, the sugars have been refined in factories and in scientific laboratories. Well, when it breaks down into a glucose factor. And these glucose factor is actually what rises in the blood and what causes diabetes. So you have to bypass the glucose, and you can bypass the glucose by getting on fructose. And the reason why I'm speaking that is because whenever you actually eat glucose, it goes through the system, and in order to actually get glucose to the cell, you need the pancreas to yield energy and yield melanin neurotransmitters to get insulin to respond to glycogen to actually put the glucose inside of the cell, like we've been talking about and discussing in this whole video. The amazing thing about fructose is fructose do not need the pancreas. Fructose only needs fruit itself to be broken down within the stomach in the duodenum, and then it infuses itself into the bloodstream by way of the microbiota or the microvilli. So what you need to do is simply go on an all fruit diet. Go to my website and get my diabetes reversal package. Or if you got diabetes 1, go on my website and get my geogenetic kit level 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to address the pancreas. We're going to address the nervous system. We're going to get the adrenals back online. We're going to make sure all the neurological transmitters are responding and sending out the proper messages. And we're going to heal the entire body. The beautiful thing about fasting and the beautiful thing about detoxing and resting is when you are focused on just resting and fasting and eating all fruits, you can give your body the yielding energy to spend all this energy on actually regenerating the pancreas and the adrenal glands, because an all fruit diet does not need the pancreas for you to yield ATP, which is nothing but your energy. Your food should not kill you. Get away from the dopamine. Get away from the sugar. The moment that they take sugar out of sugar cane, it's the moment that they isolate and cook this sugar, and then that sugar become a drug. That sugar become a neurotoxin. As long as that sugar is naturally occurring in that fruit or that vegetable, it is good for the body. But I'm going to show you how to cleanse and heal your body, get your adrenals back online, open up your lymphatic system, and send rest to the kidneys and to the adrenals and to the pancreas, for it can rehabilitate and rejuvenate itself and regenerate the cellular tissues, and you will never have to suffer from diabetes again. We have to take into consideration that we are a community that lack love inside of the community. And due to slave masters and just being in slavery and all these stress-related diseases, we have to show and prove that diabetes is a stress-related disease, because we are emotional eaters and we eat for a reason. And the reason why we're eating and are addicted to all these sugars is because it keeps our mind off of what's really going on and off the reality of, just the traumatic experiences that our ancestors have went through. When you're constantly being in a state of fight or flight, you tend to eat and have these emotional eating habits. And the fact is, we're addicted to eating and we're doing it too much. Anything that you cannot fast from, you're addicted to. We have food in our mouth at all times out of the day. We either chewing candy, chewing gum, sucking on peppermints, or we going out eating, or we thinking about our next meal. And that is our issue. We are glucose loading way too much. Sugar is actually associated with love, and all diseases have an emotional component. And the emotional component that's associated with diabetes is the lack of self-confidence and the lack of love. And we have replaced love in the Black community, or the so-called African American community, with sugar. Just notice in the speech and the terminology, we call our significant others honey. We call them sugar buns. We call them honey dip or honeydew. Notice what your grandmothers call you. They call you sugar pie. They call you pot pie. They call you everything that have something to do or associate with sugar. Notice how we actually congratulate our significant others, or when we celebrate these pagan holidays, we give them, you know, chocolate covered candy, which is nothing but sugar. When you're addicted to the alcohol that they have put in our neighborhoods, you're not addicted to the actual alcohol. You're addicted to the fermented sugar of the alcohol. Cigarettes, you're addicted to the alpha bomb sugar that they put inside of the cigarettes. The nicotine, which is nothing but sugar. Sugar cane, cocaine, all these different things inside of the neighborhood that we are addicted to. Even when it comes down to our sex, the way we make love, how we actually display love, is all connected to the sugar demon, which is nothing but processed neurotoxins that they done took from its natural state, and they done processed in a laboratory somewhere, and it is now messing up our bodies because it's a very mucus and acidic form, and it is backing up our lymphatic system. And now we are backing up all these acidosis, or what we're going to call acid ash, on our kidneys, on our pancreas, and on our adrenal glands, and it's shutting down our entire system. We must fight back. We must stop eating all these sugars. We must stop being addicted to eating, and we must just really get our culture back together, get the food that we was originally eating before slavery, before we came over here on boats and ships. And it's time to just really take a stand for your health, man. It's time to take a stand for your health. With that being said, peace, love, light, and healing. I'll speak to y'all again. Peace to the gods, peace to the earth.